places. Welcome. Welcome, Terri. We are so glad to have you here today. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items for our virtual attendees. Our Zoom audience members are on mute. If you have any issues during the presentation or would like to submit a question for Terri, please use the chat function. We will have a Q&A session at the end, and we will present your questions to Terri at that time. Also, we suggest that you change your screen view on Zoom from gallery view to speaker view so that you see whoever is speaking rather than all the other Zoomers. Atlanta Authors has been holding author events at the Roswell Library, the Cultural Arts Center, and virtually for the last 15 years. And the list of authors is impressive. Okay. It is impressive. You can see them all. We are so excited to be meeting in this new venue, and we appreciate your attendance. I want to thank David Crow and the Cultural Arts Center staff for all the work they do to bring the arts to our community. I also want to thank I think I missed a slide. The authors, the Atlanta Authors Committee members, which includes myself, Deanna Smith, Marilyn Barron, Diane Stevenson, Kathy Chaffee, George Weinstein with the Atlanta Writers Club, Judy Stanton, and the owner of a favorite local bookstore, the Book Miser herself, Annelle Herson. We want to thank the Friends of the Roswell Library and the East Roswell Libraries for their unwavering support. In addition, we work in association with Roswell Reads. That group has kept their program alive and growing for more than 17 years. Signed copies of Terri's book will be available for purchase in the lobby or at Book Miser. Book Miser is located at 3822 Roswell Road in East Cobb, less than a 10-minute drive for most areas of Roswell. Those of you on Zoom can go to their website at bookmiser.net for more information. We will add their information to the chat area of your screen so you can find it there as well. And now I would like to invite Annelle Gerson up to introduce today's author.
I have a teacher voice. I don't think I need a mic. But thank you, Lou, and thank you all for being here. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I know there are a lot of places you could be, and you chose to be here. So thank you for the privilege of your time. I can guarantee this will be an afternoon you won't forget. So first, a little bit about Terri. She was born and raised in upstate New York and holds a BA in English from the State University of New York in Albany, and an MS in technical writing from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And while she's always been a writer, and I want somebody to ask her about those manuscripts that are underneath her bed. While she's always been a writer, she spent most of her professional career as a high school teacher. She is a member of Sisters in Crime and the Atlanta Writers Club. And although this is Terri's first book, her debut, she's already receiving high praise. Lisa Jackson, who you may know is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of over 100 books with sales in excess of 20 million copies, says, All the Dark Places by Terri Parlato is a must read for anyone who loves a good mystery. The suspense was spine-tingling, and the characters were interesting, but believable. I loved this book and had to force myself to lay it aside at night. Seriously, it was a must-read. And Kirkus, whom authors will tell you doesn't like anything, says, It was a creepy debut, most notable for the nightmares it finds beneath apparently untroubled surfaces. I can tell you that I read an arc of this in September. I'm sitting out on the Lido deck, looking at the Caribbean water and the blue sky. It's mid-morning, and I think I'm just going to read a few chapters, go for a swim, and then head to lunch. Well, it was mid-afternoon when I looked down and realized I was the same color as lobsters, but I had finished. And it was amazing because every chapter ends so that you just want to read one more. So Lisa Jackson is right. You can't put this one down. And Amy in our audience was just telling me she just finished it and has the same thing to say about it. She couldn't stop reading. So I'm going to turn things over to Terri so she can tell us the who, what, when, where, why of her amazing journey. Ladies and gentlemen, Terri Parlato.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Do I need the mic? Am I good with my teacher voice? Okay. I can't thank everyone enough for being here, and I'm a crier, so. But I know how much work goes into events, and I'm just so appreciative of everyone who worked so hard to put this together, and so appreciative of you all for being here, as Annelle said, on a beautiful Saturday when we don't have any rain, for a change, and you chose to be here, and I am so very, very grateful. As Annelle said, this is my debut, and I'm 63 years old. So it was, this was a journey, a very long journey, to get from when I started writing to actually being published. And I started writing when I was 5 years old, really. I was a nerdy little kid, lived in this big old spooky house in upstate New York where there are more cows than people. And I always had a basket of books with me. Like probably most of you, I'm a voracious reader. And I have been my whole life. But as I read, I can write stories too. And so it seemed to kind of go hand in hand. So when I was 5 years old, I remember sitting at my babysitter's kitchen table, and I wrote a story about a little boy that got a puppy for his birthday. And I still remember that. And I illustrated it as well. So my writing has gotten a lot better, illustrating not so much. But it has been a very, very long journey. And I wondered, well, what would you all want to hear? And Nell said, well, tell us about that journey a little bit. So tell you a little bit about, what I've been doing for 63 years till I got to this point. So throughout my childhood, I read and I wrote stories continuously. And I was the kid once I got into school who, when I should have been paying attention to math, was in the back of the room writing stories. So it's just been a constant in my life. When I went off to college, though, it never occurred to me that you could actually be an author, that like the authors that we all know, that Stephen King's and the John Grishams and all those people, they seem to be, and they are a league apart. But I never thought of that middle ground of being an author that was, not one of the top guys, but that it was actually possible, I guess, that you could actually do this. So I went to college and I decided I'll be an English teacher. I'll teach high school English. That way I can read and I can, teach the greatest literature, and I can teach writing and all of that. So that's what I was going to do. And I have a very practical streak. I didn't grow up with very much. And I knew that when I went to college, I was going to have to come out with a degree that I could use, because there's no one that was going to pay my bills. No one was going to pay back my student loans. So I was on this trajectory of, okay, I'm going to be a high school English teacher. Then I did my student teaching. And it was so hard. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Even though I did very well, my supervising professor was very encouraging, said you're doing great and everything. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can do this. I was also I took 2 creative writing classes when I was at college, and my professors were very encouraging to me, and I gained a lot of confidence there. But still, I thought I need a degree where I have a career where I can make money and pay my bills. But I was like, I don't think I could be a teacher. That's just really, really too hard. So I found a master's degree program across the river that was for technical writing. As Annelle said, I have a master's degree in technical writing. So I'm like, that's what I'll do. I'll get to write. And there were lots of, pretty good jobs in that field at the time. So I thought, this is what I'm going to do. So I told my creative writing professor, I'm going to be a technical writer. And he said to me, don't do it. He said, and his words were, it will break your heart. And I was like, but I was 21. So did I listen? No. No, he doesn't know what he's talking about. These are good jobs. This would be a good thing. About a month into the program, I knew he was right. It was breaking my heart, but I'd already, signed up, taken the classes, paid my money. And so I was like, well, I better finish. So I got my degree as a technical writer, and I got a job, and it paid okay. It was good, but this is what I did as a technical writer. I wrote service and repair manuals this is the best part, for a company that made industrial equipment. The equipment I was writing about squirted glue on boxes. That's what I did. That's what I wrote about. So going from being very creative and making up these amazing, at least I thought, amazing stories, I was writing how to take care of equipment, squirting glue on boxes. But it's something we all need. Whenever you open like a cereal box or the glue that's holding the flap together, I wrote those instructions. Anyway, I managed to hang in there for about 4.5 years. Again, pay back those big student loans, whatever. And luckily, my husband, in the meantime, finished his master's degree, got a pretty good job, and then he got a promotion. And we kind of looked at everything. We wanted to start a family, and we were like, this is going to be tough, but we could probably scrape by and do it. So I retired from technical writing after 4.5 years. I stayed home. We have 3 children, and I was very lucky and fortunate to be able to do that. A lot of coupon clipping and that kind of thing, but we made it work. But I was writing at the same time, as much as I could. I was writing. This is like the 90s. I joined the Atlanta Writers Club. I joined a writer's critique group. And for those of you who do write, I highly recommend getting out of your little comfort bubble, being a part of a writer's group, being part of, seeing what other writers are doing. And it helped me immensely. I think that it really improved my writing so much to have other writers to talk to, have other writers, we would exchange chapters and things and give each other feedback. And I think that's really, really important because a lot of writers, not all of them, but a lot of writers, myself included, tend to live in a bubble. We are so into I'm writing stories in my head all the time. Sometimes I set out to go to the grocery store and I might end up at the gas station or whatever. I think, okay, all right, I got to stop writing in my head. But getting out there and getting to know other writers and talking to people and to talk to readers as well really makes a big difference. It was really so helpful to me and continues to be helpful to me. So once my kids got old enough where they were really in school, I decided I probably ought to get back to making a paycheck. Those 3 kids had to go to college. And I couldn't justify sitting home and writing anymore. So I thought, there's no way I can go back to technical writing. I mean, it really was a soul crusher for somebody like me. And so I said, well, I've got that English education degree. So much to my oldest daughter's chagrin, I got a job at her high school. And I had to sub. I was like a sub every day for 2 years until they decided they could trust me and hire me full time. But anyway, my oldest daughter was like, Mom, if you see me in the hall, you don't have to say hello. You can just walk. It's funny. Kids are all different. My oldest, easily embarrassed, she kind of went her way and I went mine, at least at school. My younger daughter was in my room all the time, couldn't get enough sleep. So they're all different. But anyway, so I spent the next 15 years teaching high school English, and I loved it. It was wonderful teaching the greatest literature that we have and being able to discuss that with teenagers, to see them get excited about books, things that trying to teach the Scarlet Letter. You all remember that? To teenagers and get them off their phones. It's challenging. But what they didn't really realize is that Nathaniel Hawthorne had a really good sense of humor. There are some really funny scenes in that book if you can get past the language, which was the challenge there. But anyway, I loved my years teaching. So for 15 years, I taught and wrote on the weekends pretty much. Because the one thing about teaching that was difficult was it was very exhausting, very emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting. I had to get up at 5 in the morning and I'm not a morning person. So that really was kind of difficult. But the last few years, as I got into my late 50s, it got so difficult to be that teacher that I wanted to be, because it wasn't the kids. I loved the kids. I loved teaching them, but teaching got to be more about meetings and training that you didn't need. All kinds of duties that had nothing to do with teaching. Teaching is, I love teachers because I know firsthand what they go through. And my older daughter, the one that was embarrassed, she's a teacher. She didn't learn. But it's a very, very difficult profession, especially now when things have changed so much in what you're asked to do in a school. So again, I'm in my late 50s. I would teach all day. I'd come home. It was only like 3:30 because we started, in the dark. I get home, and in the last couple of years, I would just come home and sit in a chair in the family room and just totally just veg out. I was getting nothing else done. It was just too much. And I was only writing on the weekends because there was no way my brain was going to function after a full day of teaching. So I talked to my husband and I said, I know we still have 2 kids in college, but I don't think I can do this anymore. And to his great credit, he didn't bat an eyelash. And he said, well, we'll make it work. We'll make it work. And I said, here I am. I don't remember exactly how old I was. I was in my late 50s. And I said, I'd really, really like to take a chance on getting published. That I've been writing for so many years. And as Annelle said, I've told her before, I've got boxes in my attic, in my basement, in my office, full of manuscripts. There are novels, some finished, some not finished. There's short stories. There's some really terrible poetry in those boxes. So I've been collecting and writing all this stuff for years. And and I've written everything. I wrote a pandemic novel in 2013, which I pulled out and I'm like, ooh, looked at it. It's like, and I really like it. To me, it's exciting. It's probably not up to snuff to be published, but I've written everything: historical fiction, action, adventure, anything you can think of. Just because, again, as a reader, I love everything. I read just about everything. So I've written just about everything. Anyway, so I've got all of these manuscripts all over the place. And I thought, okay, I told my husband I was going to really make a go at this, and I need to be serious and make a go of it. And I decided that I would attempt psychological thrillers because I'd been reading a lot of them. And about 10 years ago or so, we had so many great ones out there that were, and I'm like, wow, these are really cool. The clues and putting together the puzzle and the twists. And I'm like, I think this is what I'm going to do. So, and I'd written some mysteries before. They were lurking around in my basement and other places, whatever. But I really kind of put all my focus into writing a thriller. So I wrote one I thought was pretty good. And I'm like, okay, now what do I do? So for those of you who wonder how the actual process works in becoming a published author. And everybody's journey is different, but basically, your first step is to find an agent. And to find an agent, what you need to do is you send them a query letter. That is a letter that explains what your book is about and who you are, and would they like to take a look. And the first thing you need to do is research agents, because some represent romance, some, sci-fi, some represent like everything, but they will, if you look online, they will give you their wish list, most of them. This is what I'm looking for right now. So the first thing you do is you research the agents. Well, second thing you do, first thing you do is write your book. It's got to be finished if it's fiction. Write your book, have your beta readers read it and give you feedback. Once you're happy with that, then you start your query. Find your agents that represent what you write. Okay. It took me 2 years. I sent out 92 queries. But, I'm reading and researching about the process as well. And one expert in the field of publishing said, if you haven't sent out 100 queries, you didn't try. And the reason is because even though those agents are saying, this is what I'm looking for, it has to be what they're looking for at that moment. It's very, they look very quickly. It's not like they're sitting there and they're reading your query and they're thinking about it. They will take, 5 seconds, yes or no, or they might not even get to it. You have to kind of figure that about half, at least this is my experience, and it seems to be with other people, of those 92, you're about half of them you'll never hear from. Those agents are too busy. Maybe they looked, maybe they didn't, but you don't hear from them. So right away, half of them are not going to happen. And the half that's left, about half of those, it's a quick no thank you. And it's not anything, and you have to have a pretty tough skin. And my mother once said to me years ago, oh, I could never do that. I couldn't stand the rejection. You have to be able to understand it's not personal, that not everybody's going to like everything, as we know as readers. But anyway, so there is a lot of rejection. And so half you never hear from, half of the other half, it's a quick no thank you, but it's that quarter. I think I got my numbers. Numbers are not my thing. Those are the agents that say, send me a partial, send me a full. What that means is usually a partial is send me the first 50 pages. Send me a full means send me the whole thing. So you send those off and you wait. And of those, a bunch of those will be a no thank you. Well, it took me 2 years. I had a lot of near misses. A lot of the ones that said, send me your partial or your full, come back and say, I like this, but. And so there's a little back and forth there. But the feedback, some of them will give you great feedback, and that's so helpful. Although, again, you can't take it personally. I had 2 agents that read, and this is not All the Dark Places. That was the 3rd one that I gave my agent. The first one, or no, the second one that I wrote, and she shopped her, or before I got my agent, 2 agents told me, well, I like your main character, but I don't like your detective. And it wasn't this one. Then the other agent said, well, I like your detective, but I don't like your main character. So you can see how subjective it is. It's just what people like. And, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way it is. So anyway, on my 92nd query, I had my agent, who became my agent. She read the full. It wasn't All the Dark Places. Like I said, it was 2 manuscripts before that. And she left me a message on my phone. And my husband, it was a Saturday. My husband and I had been to the St. Patrick's Day Festival. So the last thing that was on my mind was hearing from an agent. So I got home and I looked at my phone and I'm like, ooh, she wants to call me, because that's a lot different from an email. Can I call you? What time? So she called me, we talked, and she offered me representation. And it was a dream come true. It was just, I couldn't believe, I still can't believe it. I'm still just like, how did this really happen? Especially at my age, it's been around a long time. And anyways, so I got my agent. She shopped. Then the next step is she shops around the manuscript. Got some, yeah, we like it, but no takers. So I wrote another one, which was actually have the same detective as all the Dark Places, but it was a different story. Shopped that around, we like it, but no takers. So I'm like, okay, I'll write another one. So my husband and I had seen the movie Knives Out. Y'all know Knives Out? And I thought, there's something, a locked room mystery. We all know what those are, where you've got a set of characters and you know from the get-go, one of them is the murderer, but which one? And I thought, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna write something where we have a group of characters and we'll see who can figure it out. So I had a lot of fun with that. So I wrote all the Dark Places, and the other thing was important to me as far as, besides doing a locked room kind of mystery, is I wanted a detective. If I was gonna write a detective story, I wanted a detective who was a woman and who was my age. I wanted a 60-year-old detective. Of course, I'm a lot older than Rita now, but a few years older. But when I wrote it, she was 60 years old, and she stays 60, which is nice. But I wanted her to be fit, attractive, vital, not ready to retire to the kitchen and bake cookies, which is nothing wrong with that. But I thought, society has a way of maybe making women feel that we're, as we age, that we're not quite as seen, and maybe it's time to retire. And again, there's nothing wrong with retiring. I love it. But I thought, it's not the same with detective fiction when the detective is a man. How many great older men do we have detectives? Like Bosch, I love Bosch. Why can't we have a woman who's also in that age group? So that was really important to me. And I've gotten great feedback from people about Rita, that they love her. I mean, she struggles a little bit with technology like I do. She's like tries to make sense of that, things are not quite the same as they were when we were, in our 20s and 30s and whatever, but she's still a vital, active person who was contributing to society and living her best life and all of that. So that was really important to me. So I wrote all the Dark Places, and my agent shopped that around, and she got an offer. And I got a 3-book deal from Kensington Publishing. And when she called me to tell me, my husband was I was like in the kitchen and talking on my phone. He's walking around the kitchen, and I start crying. I'm like, whoo, and I couldn't believe, I still can't believe it. I could not believe that this had happened. And my husband's like, what? He thought something terrible had happened. And I'm like, no, it's good. But it was a very emotional kind of thing for me. And it still is, it's still hard for me to believe that after all those years of writing all those stories and almost failing math because I was writing stories, that I would actually someday be published. So it has been wonderful. People have been so wonderful. I love every bit of it, except for kind of social media, which is not my thing. And I was told I had to be on social media, and I'm trying my best. And I'm afraid I probably insulted people or ignored people because I have no clue what I'm doing. But I am on Instagram and Twitter, and I have an author Facebook page, and I do my best. But it's just kind of not me. Before this all happened, I had a Facebook page, a personal one, only because my sister in California was like, please get a Facebook, because then you can at least see pictures of your nieces and stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. But I never posted anything. It's like, do people really want to know about my birthday dinner? I don't think so. It's like, I was like, it's really, really tough. So the social media part's been really tough. But I love getting emails from readers through my website. I can do email. That makes sense to me. Anyway, so that's kind of what I've been going through. And I love talking to people about books. That's an old English teacher in me too. Just love to talk about books. And my second book, which is called What Waits in the Woods. And I have a bookmark, so I can give y'all a bookmark. So on the one side is All the Dark Places. On the other side is What Waits in the Woods. I was hoping I'd have some ARCs by now, the advanced reader copies. I could actually show you a physical copy of my new book, but I don't have them yet. But it's coming out in December. And Rita, Detective Rita, will be back with a new case.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. And I just wanted you again to all know how very grateful I am, because without readers and without booksellers and without people in the community who put these things together, I wouldn't be able to do this. And this is my dream come true after 63 years. Here's my dream, and I couldn't have gotten here, like I said, without all of you. Questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one for you.
Yes.
How did you pick Boston as a location?
Oh, good question. Like Annelle said in the introduction, I'm from upstate New York, like really, really, really rural. Like in my hometown, only 161 people live there today. It's like farms and woods. But I love Boston. I love New England. And I'm a big history genealogy buff. And come to find out, 5 generations of my family on my mother's English side lived in Boston. And actually, my ancestor, they came in 1634. And my ancestor established the town of Haverhill, which is a little town just north of Boston. So that was exciting. And my husband and I go to New England all the time for vacations. We love it. We're going again in the fall. So I just love Boston and I love New England. And I thought that'd be a good place to set a novel, because I mean, upstate New York is really nice, but we don't have any, I wanted someplace where I could have a small fictional town, which is Braybridge, which it's fictional and it's small, but then I could have it near Boston. So if I wanted a city setting as well, it would be right there. So that's kind of why I picked it. Yes.
Who schooled you in the detective world and the police world?
Well, I had to do some research, but I'm very lucky that in my little writer's critique group, we have a former police officer. So I lucked out there. He's been very, very helpful. He was never a detective, but he worked with detectives. He's very helpful. He knows everything about guns and police procedure and that kind of thing. Although he does tell me, he says every department does things differently. So, which is good. So like, if I make a mistake, I say, well, in Braybridge, that's how they do it. So, but that's a little bit of a challenge, trying to making sure I get that straight. But I think readers are a little forgiving as long as you're not way out there too wrong. So, but yeah, it's been great to have him there. Anybody? Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your writing process? Do you prefer to handwrite? Do you have a certain time during the day that you absolutely just sit and write or think, or how do you describe it?
Well, my schedule is, and I find once you're retired, if you don't have a schedule, you don't really do anything. So I was like, if I'm going to write as a sort of profession, I need a schedule. So what I do is Monday through Friday, after I get up and I take care of the dog and have my coffee, I'll go up to my office, shut the door, and I write. And I sit there and I write because I find my brain is freshest in the morning, more creative in the morning. Then in the afternoon, I will sometimes do some editing, and I'll lots of times print stuff off and do, because the one thing that's a little bit of a struggle, and again, this is kind of age related. We do, the things we do have to struggle with is my vision. I have a really tough time editing on the computer. I do it, but it's so much easier for me to have a hard copy. So in the afternoons, I might sit with hard copies and edit that way. And of course, that takes up a lot of paper. So I usually use those for grocery lists. When I'm done, I'll fold them over to recycle this grocery list. So, but yeah, I write in the morning, edit in the afternoon. And I do keep a little notebook with me sometimes because, like I said, I'll be driving to the store and something will occur to me and I know I'm not going to remember. So I might sit and do some handwriting too as well. But that's basically it. Yeah.
We have a question from the Zoom.
Okay.
Can you give a brief overview of the story?
Oh, all righty. Well, it starts with a young woman, Molly Bradley, who is throwing a 40th birthday party for her husband, who's a psychologist. And they've only been married 3 years, but Molly's had a very difficult life. Lots of trauma in her childhood that she tries to keep hidden. She doesn't really want to face it. So she has kind of pushed that to the back of her mind as much as she can, but of course it's very difficult. So they have this wonderful birthday party with let's see, 3 couples besides themselves. Is that right? They're best friends, and the party's wonderful and everything. And Molly goes to bed, but when she wakes up in the morning, she finds her husband Jay dead in his home office. That he has been, and this is all the first chapter, so I'm not really giving too much away. He has been murdered in his home office. So the book is about trying to figure out which one of their friends did it, because my detective, Rita Myers, again, she was a detective with the Boston PD for many years, but she's moved out to Graybridge into the suburbs. And so she's seen a lot of this kind of thing. But through the rest of the book, we're looking at Rita trying to figure out which one of, because of clues and things and what else happens, she realizes it is one of the Bradley's friends who actually did it. So, and then Molly is trying to cope, and she's being harassed and kind of stalked by somebody that she can't figure out who it is. And she doesn't complain about it because she thinks, oh, it's just somebody who knows my past, because the trauma that happened in her past was national news. She's changed her name, she's moved and all that, but she's always afraid somebody's going to uncover who she was because she doesn't want to face it. So we see Molly trying to come to grips with this trauma. You know, she had that trauma in her past, and now her husband's been murdered. And it's kind of her journey to rising above it all and reclaiming her life. And Rita has her own little stories going on. We hear about her family. Her story arcs over into the next books. So we find out more about Rita, who has a little bit of a love interest in an older FBI agent that she's worked with in the past. So we hear more about that in the second book a little bit. She's not so sure she wants a man in her life, but you know, she's not sure. But anyway, so Molly's story comes to a conclusion in All the Dark Places, but Rita's story moves on to the next books.
When did you decide in your writing that Rita would be your breakout character for the next book?
Well, when I wrote All the Dark Places, I got such good feedback on Rita. People really liked her and wanted to see more. So I thought, you know, and lots of series do have a detective that moves on, and I enjoy those series too. Like I said, I love Bosch, like to hear about, you know, he's been around forever. But I like that idea. And so I got so that I really liked Rita. And Rita does all the brave stuff that I'm way too scared to ever do. You know, so I can have Rita doing all kinds of stuff, and they're like, wow, you know, wish I was that brave. So she's fun.
Did the characters, it's very cleverly written. And Molly, in the beginning, there were smells of the fact that she had a past, but it's not really given, like you just said in the first chapter. It's just little clips that there's something more with Molly here. You have to read on to find out.
Right.
And so when you wrote the book, did you have the characters all figured out? So the ending was in your head, or did that evolve as the story evolved?
Well, Molly's story was always there. Who the murderer was, though,
That's what I mean.
yeah, the murderer, I wasn't sure who I was going to make the murderer.
Yeah, because that's what you.
Yeah, you know, I sometimes need to write it to figure it out. Where there are other writers, because I talk to, you know, different writers, they have different ways of doing things, and some writers will outline the story beginning to end in detail. I can't do that. I have a general idea, like I have a general idea of Molly's story, but I need to be open to where it takes me. And so in the beginning, I didn't know who was going to be the murderer.
Because you did mention the Boston Strangler being in Boston. And so did you do research on that? Because that planted a big seed in the very beginning of the book, the Boston Strangler.
Yeah, I've read.
And the fact that, you know, that type of character looks like the genuine man next door. which
Right.
I would never expect.
Right, I did read.
Plant that seed in the characters, yeah.
Yep, I did read about him and saw some documentaries on him. I also read a book, what's it called? Mind Hunter, I think is the name of it. And that is, goes through some of the terrible serial killers and things like that from a psychological perspective, from law enforcement and the psychology. So I did do that kind of research that helped me with that.
Have you ever had writer's block? And if so,
I just keep writing. The thing is, I think when you get to a point, you're not sure where you're gonna go someplace. The thing is because a lot of what you write, at least with me, this is my experience, it may turn out that, well, this is terrible. You read it later, you think, I don't want to go there. But I would tell people if you have writer's block, and this is what I do, you get to a point, you don't know where you're going, write anything. Just anything, random, whatever, because it'll just get the creativity going again. And you can always redo it, rewrite it, get rid of it, whatever. But that's what I do. I tend to just keep writing anything.
I have not read the book yet. But is Rita a friend of Molly's?
No, Rita is the lead detective in my small town's police force.
And
Yeah.
She comes in because.
She comes in because she's the lead detective in town, and it's like, this is a big case, they don't have, well, my little town of Greybridge is, it's a murder, which I'm gonna say, it doesn't happen too much in a small town, but if I'm making a series, I kind of be careful. Do y'all remember Murder, She Wrote? Jessica Fletcher and Murder, She Wrote? And I thought, Cabot Cove was like the murder capital of the world. 200 people there and somebody's killed every week. So, I'm trying to make sure that I don't do that. But anyway, so Rita's the lead detective. It's a big case, so that's why she's there. So she doesn't know Molly.
Yeah, and each chapter switches. It's Rita,
Mhm.
Molly, Rita, Molly, and it's told in the first person.
Mhm.
So it's, you're into Rita's mind, you're into Molly's mind. They're not really connected. They don't know each other. They know each other professionally,
Mhm.
but they're you're into their backgrounds.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many beta readers did you have, and what was your relationship with those people?
I have in my writers group, and they really acted as my beta readers, and my friend Karen here is also my beta reader. They had, there are 3 people in the group besides myself. And one of them, she and I have been in this writers group for almost 30 years. So she will tell me something's not working. And Karen is very good at that too. She's been friends. Her husband and my husband have been friends since 2nd grade. So long time. And so she'll tell me what she thinks too. So that's why writers group, or, just friends or people that'll tell you the truth, that's who you want to read your stories. I mean, if something's not working, they're going to tell you. And I'd rather have my friends tell me something's not working before my agent tells me it's not.
Does your agent or the editor make suggestions to you, or was it just blanket, I love the book and no corrections?
No, well, my agent is actually, she's like in my age group. She's done this a long time. And she spent part of her career as an editor too. So she's really good at finding, even though I'm an English teacher, when I'm in my creative mode, sometimes she'll say, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I made that mistake. But she's really good at that. She gives me a little, her feelings on the plot as well, a little bit. But my editor, and I love him. He is so funny. He's so supportive, but he's always wants one more big thing. And I'm writing the 3rd one now. And I was talking to him on the phone the other day, or not the other day, it was like a month ago, maybe. Anyway, and he's like, what if this happened? I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, let me see what I can do. Let me throw that twist in. And right now I'm like digging through trying to make that twist work. It's a great twist, but it's like, oh my gosh, that's going to take some doing to make it happen. So yeah, he's great at, what if you did this? So, and the thing is, he doesn't insist I do it, but the thing is, he's the guy that decides what gets published. So if he thinks something's a good idea, I'm gonna do my best to make sure it works. And he has good ideas. Yeah.
Did you start out thinking it would be a series?
Not really, but you know, in the back of my mind, because I think because so many detective books are series, that I think that it was in the back of my mind that it could be, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to write a series. It just kind of came to me that it might work. Anything?
So you write your book, you have your agent reads your book, then what?
She shops it around. She calls on her contacts in the publishing industry. My publisher is Kensington. So she knows this editor at Kensington, known him a long time. It's all about contacts, network. That's the thing is, writers, it's hard because, like I said, with me, I'm in my little bubble, but there's a lot of networking that goes on, a lot of relationships that go on. That's why having an agent with those contacts is just crucial. So she sent actually this time, because she'd already shopped 2 around and didn't get much. This time, maybe because she had faith in this book more than the others, I don't know. She approached the editor at Kensington that she works with and knows, and she offered him an exclusive. What that means is she won't shop it around to anybody else unless he doesn't want it. So he had that pressure of, if I don't want it, he had first dibs. So he read it and he said, yes, we want to give her a contract. So that's what happens. Anything else? Yeah.
What was it like working with Audible? Did you have input in the production process?
Audible, okay. This is a brave new world to me. I have no idea what I'm doing as far as from the publishing end. It's all this learning is going on. What happens, at least in my case, again, I can only speak for what I went through because I'm not sure. I said, I don't know if it works this way, but Kensington, the publisher, sold the rights to Audible. And I get nothing as far as no input, none of that. But I went to a writer's conference last year, and one of the executives at the Audible took me out to dinner, which was really nice. I was like, oh, he was really, really nice. And the only thing I said to him is I said, I know I don't have any input to this, and I'm fine with that because that's how the industry works. Unless you're like, if you're a big deal, like Stephen King, I'm sure he can tell them whatever he wants. But, you're somebody like me, you don't really have that kind of input. But I said to him, I said, the only thing I'm asking is don't let Rita sound like she's a little old lady and whatever. I said, make her a strong, I'm hoping that she has a strong voice. That was the only input that I gave them. So, but I don't listen to audiobooks. I know a lot of my friends do listen to audiobooks all the time. And I just never have. I don't know. I don't wonder if it's the way my brain is wired, but I need to see, and I don't read like a Kindle or anything. I need a paper book that I can hold in my hands. For one thing, visually, that's what I need. And it's just the way that my brain processes things that works best for me. So yeah, so you don't really get that kind of input on all these other little things. Like they sold the print rights to a publisher in Poland. So I've been translated into one language. And it was kind of exciting because my husband is, the Parlato, he's half Italian, but his mom is Polish. So we're like, and his grandmother used to speak Polish to him when he was a little boy, but he only remembers a couple words. But anyway, we thought it was kind of cool that, hey, I've been published in Poland. So, but you don't have any control. I mean, all this stuff goes on. And it's like, then they tell me and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Did you get the royalties, right?
Well, you don't get any royalties until you earn out your advance. When they give you your contract, they will give you, and it's really not much money, which I don't expect. I'm a debut author. It's a little, they give you a little bit of money, which I've used to, go to conferences and a couple of things, trying to put money back into what I'm doing, what would further my writing. Anyway, so you get what's called you earn out, which means once they make enough to cover what they gave me, then I will get royalties. But it's been 6 months and I haven't heard anything. That's another thing that I'm learning about this industry is you don't really hear much about the business side, what's going on. It's driving my husband crazy because he's a businessman. He's like, where's the data? Where's the, all of the, like, I don't know. So yeah, eventually, hopefully I'll earn a little bit that way. Anybody else?
And it just goes to paperback after this?
Yes, the paperback's coming out. They told me in November.
When do your children want to be officers?
Well, my older daughter is a teacher. She's a math teacher. She got the math science gene. Yeah, so she's not writing any stories. My younger daughter, who's actually an RN, so she's kind of a science girl, but she used to write, she's written some stories, but she's never done any, kind of like I was for a long time. She just wrote because she wanted to. So she's written some stories. My son, I don't think has written anything. No, okay. He's my culture language kind of kid. He's fluent in French. He speaks a smattering of other languages. I mean, that's kind of he loves language, and he and I, we will talk at home and use all of this strange vocabulary. And my older daughter's like, guys are so silly, but we'll go through Shakespearean insults and all kinds of stuff. And, the oldest daughter doesn't quite get all that, but none of them have actually expressed an interest in seriously writing. So maybe someday. It took me a long time. Yeah.
As an English teacher, what did you teach other world lit or American lit, and what are some of your favorite classic books to teach and read or go back to?
Well, over my career, I taught 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. 9th grade in Gwinnett County anyway. 9th grade was kind of a survey. It was like everything, a little bit of everything. 10th grade was world lit. I taught that for a while. And 11th grade was American lit. That's my favorite. I love American lit. I loved it all. But I'm a big history buff. So when you're teaching American lit, at least in my class, we learn the history and along with the literature, because they're so intertwined. Authors wrote about what they experienced in their time period, what all of the wars and the suffering and all the things. And I just love American lit. I miss teaching some of those books. I miss teaching The Great Gatsby, teaching about the 20s. I miss Huckleberry Finn, which is the greatest piece of anti-racist literature we have. It takes a lot of teaching because of the history to have the kids understand what went into that and what Twain, through satire, was trying to teach us. And one of my favorite memories from teaching is I read a scene, because I read to the kids, read aloud to your kids, they have to hear it. And reading the scene where the runaway slave Jim is telling Huck about, he's ripped away from his family. He's hundreds of miles down the Mississippi, and his family, which he wants to make money to go back and buy them out of slavery. But he is so full of sorrow and grief as he tells Huck about his little girl and the pain and suffering that comes through Jim's voice is just, it was one day when I was reading that section and the kids were like so quiet, so engaged. I had a girl start screaming. And she said, Mrs. Parlato, stop. I can't stand it. That's what literature can do. And I really miss that teaching. So anyway, sorry. If I could go and be a guest teacher and just do that part and not have to go to the meetings, I'd be happy.
I have a question. Where besides Book My Book would your book be available? And would it be available in the library system?
It should be.
It is.
Is it in the library? Yeah, it's around. So yeah, it should be pretty easy to find.
As a Georgia author, I would think most of the metro area libraries would have that.
Cobb doesn't have it yet. Cobb County doesn't have it yet. So I was trying to. It's been out for a while.
Ask for it.
I did twice. I keep on, I figured if I keep on sending in.
I appreciate it. Anybody else? Well, I'm so grateful again. This doesn't happen without all of you. I'm so very, very grateful. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I was gonna say, let's give her a big round of applause, but we already have. And I'm reminded. And just to remind everyone, Bookmiser is in the lobby with copies of all the dark places that are available for purchase, and there are a few that are already signed. The next Atlanta Authors event will be held Thursday, August 3rd at 6 p.m. here at the, in this room at the Cultural Arts Center. It'll be featuring Hank Philippi Ryan. She is a former reporter and weekend anchor for WSB-TV. Ms. Ryan will team up with retired top anchor John Pruitt, who is author of Tell It True, to talk about her latest novel, The House Guest. The nationally best-selling author of 14 thrillers, Ryan is a master of suspense and a gifted storyteller. In her latest novel, she explores the dark heart of marriage and a woman's struggle to reclaim her power. Ryan is currently an on-air investigative reporter for WHDH-TV in Boston. This will be another hybrid event, and we hope you can join us. Watch for an email. We got, I think everybody, if you haven't signed the email list, we would love to get your email. There'll be an announcement with the registration link, or you could just go to eventbrite.com and search for Atlanta Authors. Roswell Reads has a couple of big events coming up soon. The first will be on Tuesday, September 12th at 6 p.m. Again, here at the Cultural Arts Center, when Tracy Anderson Wood will discuss her historical fiction novel, The President's Wife. Registration will open at roswellreads.com. Then Roswell Reads major event. Oops, did I go too far? The major event will be New York Times bestselling author of This Tender Land, William Kent Kruger. He will be discussing his new novel, The River We Remember. This special event will be held on Friday, September 29th at 7 p.m. here at the Cultural Arts Center. Tickets are $20. There will also be a writer's workshop with Mr. Kruger on Saturday, September 30th at 10 a.m. at the Roswell Adult Recreation Center. Those tickets are $13.50. So you can go to roswellreads.com to register. Unfortunately, Kruger's book will not be published until September 5th, and this is September 29th when the event is. But you can pre-order now from Bookmiser. The author will sign your books at the event. If you are among the first 100 registrants to pre-order a book, you will get reserved priority seating at the event. Thank you all again for your participation today. We'll stay online for a few minutes and unmute the Zoom audience in case any of them have a question or comment for Terri. So take care, everyone, and come back to other Atlanta authors.
Terri, you want to come out to the lobby, and if anybody wants to purchase the book, she'll be able to sign it.
Take their water.
He's a big one.